Right. Ya regresamos. Let's all go to the movies. Wait, is that copyrighted? Welcome to the movie review. So this movie, I recently discovered that YouTube has free movies if you have YouTube Premium. So technically they're not free, but you already got Premium. You know, I'm using Premium, so I don't have to hear commercials on music, podcasts, and whatnot. Mainly just that, podcast and music. But now, movies, YouTube's come up, my friend. So, sorry, pardon me. But, I wanted to talk about Puss in Boots. I was very impressed. I watched it twice now. I had to show my sister the movie as well. But the original one, the 2011 Puss in Boots movie, film, 3D. So, first, when I looked at Puss in Boots, the original thing that came up was the origin, the real life origin. So I'm going to read that because I thought that was interesting. So Puss in Boots is an Italian fairy tale, later spread throughout the rest of Europe, about an anthropomorphic cat who uses trickery and deceit to gain power, wealth, and the hand of a princess in marriage for his penniless and low-born master. So that's the original legends of Puss in Boots. That's a badass cat. It turned into something else because now this one's in Spain, right? So Puss in Boots is a 2011 American computer animated comedy film produced by DreamWorks Animation and distributed by Paramount Pictures. The film was directed by Chris Miller from a screenplay by Tom Wheeler based on a story by Brian Lynch, Will Davies, and Wheeler. It stars Antonio Banderas reprising his role as Puss in Boots alongside Salma Hayek, Zach Galifianakis, who was in last week's movie, Billy Bob Thornton, and Amy Sedaris. A spin-off of the Shrek franchise, the fifth installment in the film series thereof, and rather than an adaptation of the Puss in Boots fairy tale, it follows the origin story of Puss in Boots on his adventures years before the events of Shrek 2, which came out in 2004. Accompanied by his friends Humpty Dumpty, which was Galifianakis, and Kitty Softpaws, which was Salma Hayek, Puss is pitted against Jack and Jill, Thornton and Sedaris, two murderous outlaws and ownership of three legendary magical beans that lead to a great fortune for the golden eggs from the Great Terror, the gigantic goose. Development began following the release of Shrek 2 in 2004. Originally titled Puss in Boots: The Story of an Ogre Killer, it was announced as a direct-to-video film to be released in 2008. In October of 2006, the film was reslated as a theatrical release due to market conditions and DreamWorks Animation's realization that the Puss character deserved more, with Shrek III 2007 director Miller joining the project as the director. Guillermo del Toro signed as an executive producer in September of 2010. This was the first film to be partly made in India from DreamWorks Animation, in which a Bangalore studio owned by Technicolor, which had mainly worked on TV specials and DVD bonus material, spent 6 months animating 3 major scenes in the film. Cool. I bet you they're very proud of them. And they should be. Puss in Boots had its world premiere on October 16, 2011, aboard the Royal Caribbean's international cruise ship Allure of the Seas, docked in Fort Lauderdale, Florida at the time, and was released in theaters on October 28, 2011 in 2D, digital 3D, and IMAX 3D formats. 3D was a big thing in that time. Puss in Boots received positive reviews from critics and was a box office success, grossing over $556 million on production budget of $130 million. At the 84th Academy Awards, the film was nominated for Best Animated Feature. I wonder what won. A television series spin-off from the film titled The Adventures of Puss in Boots premiered on Netflix in January of 2015. Kind of want to watch it. And concluded in January of 2018 after 6 seasons, while a sequel set after the Shrek films and entitled Puss in Boots: The Last Wish was released on December 21st, 2022. I gotta go see it. The film had been in development since 2004 when Shrek 2 was released. Chris Miller, who worked on the, we already said that earlier though about the 2004 Shrek 2 thing. Chris Miller, shout out to Chris's, who worked as head of story in Shrek 2, was a big proponent of making a spin-off film centered on Puss in Boots due to his love for the character and the intriguing story potential he had, given the adventures he mentions to have had in the film. Dang, I gotta go watch that one just so I can see Puss in Boots. He's like my favorite Shrek character now. As a Shrek 2 spinoff, it was initially planned for release in 2008 as a direct. Why is it repeating itself, man? Maybe I recopied it twice. Maybe that's on me. Okay, so back to Guillermo del Toro. Having exited from The Hobbit, del Toro was invited by the crew to watch an early screening of the film, half animated, half storyboarded, which del Toro loved and asked him if he could be somehow involved in the production. Discussing del Toro, Miller stated, we worked out a system for him to come in once every few months or whenever he had something new to show him. If we needed someone to bounce ideas off of, he was always there, and if we had a problem we were tackling, we'd get Guillermo on the red phone, our emergency phone, and ask him advice on what we should do with a certain character or scene. It was like having our own film school. Miller stated that del Toro was particularly involved in Humpty Dumpty's character design, suggesting to make him more like Da Vinci. It was del Toro's idea to make Humpty an ingenious freak of nature who builds contraptions such as a flying machine. Del Toro rewrote the ending to redeem the character and deepen his relationship with Puss, an unconventional conclusion for a family film. He helped design the fantasy elements of the giant's castle, as well as the architecture of the town, which he conceived as an amalgam of Spain and Mexico. During the film's production, the filmmakers struggled for a long time about including the giant from Jack and the Beanstalk, an English fairy tale from which the magic beans and the castle in the clouds were borrowed from. As the filmmakers had already figured out the giant's world, the giant itself was challenging for them. They wanted to depict him faithfully like the classic fairy tale giant, but despite how hard they tried to incorporate him into the story, his presence turned out to be predictable. In the end, it was decided to have the giant killed off-screen in order to subvert fairy tale expectations. Smart. Antonio Banderas reprised his role as Puss in Boots from the Shrek films. According to Miller, the crew wanted to cast Zach Galifianakis, Billy Bob Thornton, Amy Sedaris, and Salma Hayek early on during production. As Humpty Dumpty was Galifianakis' first voiceover role, he was allowed to improvise by the filmmakers. Similarly, Thornton enjoyed the experience of voicing Jack as he was looking to challenge himself with the role out of his comfort zone. Sedaris, with whom Miller had worked with before, improvised most of her dialogue as Jill, given almost 50 different versions of her scripted lines. Except for Puss, the film features new characters. Citing the co-writer David Steinberg, it doesn't overlap with Shrek at all. Partly that was done to tell an original Puss story, but partly because we didn't know what Shrek 4 were going to do with the characters, and we couldn't write conflicting storylines. The film was teased in Shrek Forever After, when Shrek finally shuts the book titled Shrek and puts it away next to a book titled Puss in Boots. Puss in Boots is the first DreamWorks animation film. I already said that. It's been 6 months. The outsourcing had financial advantages with 40% less labor cost than in the US. But the primary reason for outsourcing to India was lack of personnel due to the studio producing as many as 3 films a year. The film was renamed Cat in Boots in the United Arab Emirates for officially unknown reasons, but is suspected for religious and cultural reasons. I mean, obvious, the name. Of course they changed it. According to the UAE's National Media Council, which is responsible for censorship, the UAE didn't have any involvement in the rename, and the decision to change the name had been made by the Hollywood studio and the movie distributors in the UAE. Consequently, since the film's distributor was based in the UAE, the same print was syndicated to all theaters throughout the Middle East. However, the name change was limited to the film's original theatrical run, as merchandise and later regional home media release retained the film's original title. Interesting. On Rotten Tomatoes, Puss in Boots has an approval rating of 86%, based on 155 reviews and an average rating of 6.9 out of 10. Its critical consensus reads, it isn't deep or groundbreaking. I don't agree with that. But what it lacks in profundity, Puss in Boots more than makes up with an abundance of wit, visual sparkle, and effervescent charm. Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned Puss in Boots a score of 65 out of 100. I don't agree with that. Indicating generally favorable reviews. Blah, blah, blah. More blah, blah, blah. Some dude said it has the best 3D work yet from a mainstream animated feature. I never really cared for 3D because I have glasses, so I can't put 3D glasses on my glass and then to watch the whole movie like that. But you can tell the scenes that they use, like where the money's faulty. It's like, whoa. Some dude named Bill Goody Koontz, GOODYKOONTZ of the Arizona Republic, gave the film 3.5 out of 5 stars, saying as good as Banderas and Hayek are together, Galifianakis is better, making Humpty Dumpty of all people one of the more intriguing animated characters to come along in a while. I agree with that. He was very interesting. He's a nice surprise. Yo. Oh, there's talking about a play. This one Moira. Whoa, I haven't heard that name since Schitt's Creek. That's the only time I've heard. Moira McDonald of the Seattle Times gave the film 3 out of 4, saying, "I left dreaming of a world in which cats could tango." That was a badass scene. And when's the last time a movie did that? Definitely wasn't the movie Cats. Yeah, man. It's like about, I didn't even know who it was doing the voices when I was watching it, but it was tight. In February of 2012, director Chris Miller stated he would love to make a Puss in Boots sequel, as the character was set up to have more fantastic, surreal, and funnier adventures. But they would first analyze how the audience reacted to the film and whether they would want a sequel. In November of 2012, executive producer Guillermo del Toro said that they already did a couple of script drafts for a sequel and that Miller wants to take Puss on an adventure to exotic places. In April of 2014, Antonio Banderas, the voice of Puss, said the work on the sequel had just begun. In June of 2014, the movie was titled Puss in Boots 2, 9 Lives and 40 Thieves, and was scheduled to be released on November 2nd, 2018. 2 months later, it was moved 1 month to December 21st, 2018. January 1. In 2015, Puss in Boots was removed from the release schedule following corporate restructuring and DreamWorks Animation 2 policy to release 2 films a year. 2 months later, Banderas said in an interview that the script was under restructuring and that Shrek may appear in the film. The film, I wonder if he did. The film also spawned an animated series that premiered. All right, we talked about that. And the game, I looked up the game and they said the game's pretty cool. It was developed by Blitz Games, published by THQ for Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, Wii, and Nintendo DS. So in the sequel, so November 6, 2018, it was announced by Variety. Oh, did I move the camera? That Chris Meledandri had been tasked to be one of the executive producers of both Shrek 5 and Puss in Boots 2, with the cast returning. In February of 2019, Bob Persichetti, the head of story on the first film and co-director of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse 2018, signed on to direct a sequel. That's why you can notice the animation similarities. I guess that's why. Latifah Awawu, who produced the original Puss in Boots film, would oversee the development of the sequel alongside Meledandri. In August of 2020, the name Puss in Boots: The Last Wish had been trademarked by DreamWorks, revealing the new title of the sequel. Yeah. Whoa, so they were replaced. So in March 2021, the film received a new release date of September 23rd, 2022, with DWA's parent company Universal Studio now handling distribution. Persichetti and Uwau were respectively replaced by Joel Crawford and Mark Swift as director and producer after having previously done so on The Croods: A New Age, 2020. While Antonio Banderas was also confirmed to be reprising his role as Puss. The film's first trailer was released on March 15th, 2022. Salma Hayek was later confirmed to reprise her role as Kitty Softpaws, while other cast members of the film include Florence Pugh as Goldilocks. Oh yeah, because the trailer, she's the bad guy. Olivia Colman, Wagner Moira, Ray Winstone, John Mulaney, I don't know. The only one I recognize is John Mulaney. Divine Joy Randolph, Harvey Guillen as Perito the dog, Anthony Mendez, and Samson Cayo. In April 2022, the film's release date was first pushed. Remember when December 21st, 2012 was like, everybody was like, not everybody, but some people, not obviously